It's been 1 month since Donald Trump took office as the US president. And in that short time, he's pulled the US out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership and said he will renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement. Now his administration is reportedly looking at ways to recalculate America's trade deficit. That could make the gap appear bigger than it is today, possibly giving it a stronger hand in trade talks. The main idea under consideration is to change the treatment of re-exported goods, which are first imported to the US and then transferred unchanged to a third country. The imported items would be counted in the trade figures, but the re-exported goods would not. Such an approach would inflate trade deficit numbers and could, in some cases, even change a surplus into a deficit. This recalculation would mostly affect countries with free trade deals with the US, such as Mexico. Now, America's trade deficit with Mexico stood at $63 billion last year. Under the revised method, that figure would almost double to $115 billion. Now, joining me from New York is Max Wolff, who's a market strategist at 55 Capital. Max, thank you ever so much for joining us. How much of an advantage do you think that such a recalculation, a rejigging of the methodology, how much of an advantage would that give the US in trade talks going forwards?
So great to be here. Always a pleasure to join you. Not much, and I think what it does is it makes a further case that we are trying to put our finger on the scale in order to make a point about imbalances on the scale, which then gets some shade thrown on it by having your finger on the scale. So I think it's actually probably actively counterproductive. It looks like it will also affect very badly heavy industry, and rather strangely, as it's a sinking portion of the US economy, it's an absolute obsession, the car industry of this particular administration, and it will hit the car industry quite hard because the truth is we don't live in a nation-state manufacturing model, and we're unlikely to. So really, we have a global supply chain, and this will distort global supply chain measurement.
Under global trade rules, would this even be allowed?
Well, it's not 100% clear, but at the very least it will be litigated, and it will be aggressively litigated. It doesn't make a lot of sense if you have a global supply chain and lots of trading partners to walk away from a agreed common accounting and do your own. And part of the reason that you want to be able to have a similar accounting, either through your own past and to the present or with other countries, is so that you can make apples to apples comparisons. Whatever you think about this method, it turns apples to apples like comparisons into apple to orange comparisons, which are, by definition, harder to understand and harder to quantify.
If the US trade deficit goes up significantly, that would presumably put a lot of downward pressure on the dollar. Could China and Mexico turn around and call the US a currency manipulator?
So it's possible. We've seen both attempts to jawbone or talk up the US currency as well as talk down the US currency in the last 30 days, sometimes separated by a mere few hours, which is quite unusual. I don't really think that anyone wants to bring that up. What I think we're more likely to see is if the United States makes good on some of the most bombastic threats to the global order, i.e. pursuing various actions against other nations, then I would expect us to reap what we have sown, and I'd expect us to get hit with all kinds of counter charges. I do think there's still some scope to avoid that. I think that's unambiguously the best case scenario. But if we go down that road, others will go down it. I think we're unlikely to see them go first.
Max Wolff, 55 Capital in New York. Thank you ever so much.